Lockdown at school. Purple light. The main school building looked the same as always. Grey, boring, and filled with the faint hum of old fluorescent lights. The clock on the wall ticked away, while students lazily copied notes from the board. The teacher walked around quietly, occasionally scolding someone for whispering. It was one of those mornings that felt endless. "This is such a joke," muttered Sarah, sitting in the third row. A sassy, rebellious girl with thick black eyeliner who never followed the rules. Beside her sat Adam, the bespectacled class nerd who loved rules and had never once been late for a class. They couldn't be more different, yet their names always appeared together on the teacher's incident reports. And then came the announcement. Building lockdown, this is not a drill." The voice over the intercom sounded strange, mechanical, distorted, like it came from some old busted cassette player, too slow, too robotic. Everyone in the room froze, even Sarah, who for once had nothing to say. The teacher quickly rushed to the door, locking it in 3 swift turns as protocol dictated. She then pulled down the blinds and motioned for the students to sit quietly in the corner. From the keys hanging by the classroom door, a faint purple shimmer reflected across the room. "What's going on?" Sarah whispered. "Maybe there's a shooter," Adam replied, his eyes glued to the door. "Yeah, right, or maybe someone just screwed with the damn intercom." Sarah rolled her eyes, but then she noticed the teacher. Something about her was off. Her hands were trembling, and her breathing was uneven. Too slow. Though she faced away from them, something about the way she stood wasn't right, like she wasn't fully present in her own body. Time dragged on. Hours passed. Nothing happened. No police, no further announcements, and no one dared to make a sound. Outside, there was dead silence. The atmosphere thickened. Something wasn't right, but no one could figure out what. No sirens, no footsteps in the halls, no sign that anything was happening. The clock showed 5:30 p.m., but outside, the sun hadn't even started to set. Instead, a dim purple light seeped through the blinds. It wasn't like sunlight or car headlights. It was something else entirely. Adam, still sitting quietly beside Sarah, noticed that the other kids were starting to act strange. They were too calm, almost apathetic. One girl sat with her mouth open, staring blankly at the wall. And something weird was happening to the teacher too. Adam noticed her hands twitching unnaturally. Just for a moment, but it was enough. The movement didn't seem to belong to her body. And as she stood there, her breathing became even more irregular. Sometimes so slow it seemed like she wasn't breathing at all. "Do you see this too?" he whispered. Sarah nodded, but before she could respond, the teacher turned around. "Be quiet," she said, but the voice wasn't hers. It was like someone, or something, was speaking through her. It tried to mimic a human tone, but didn't quite manage it. As the light outside intensified, the teacher walked over to one of the windows. That's when they saw it for the first time. Her movements weren't normal. They were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on strings. "We need to get out of here. Now," Sarah whispered. "The doors are locked," Adam replied, "and probably everything else too." "Why don't you stop being such a smartass and figure out how to get us out?" Sarah hissed back. Adam thought for a moment. "Fine. The emergency exit by the lockers. That should work." Sarah crouched and began to crawl toward the locked door. Adam followed close behind. Before they could reach it, a scratching, unnatural sound filled the room, like something was crawling along the walls. Sarah turned back. The teacher wasn't by the window anymore. She was right behind them. Her eyes were empty, lifeless. The skin around her mouth had started to tear. It looked like she was trying to speak, but had forgotten how. The sound she made wasn't human. It was more like the high-pitched whining of an animal. stretched to an unbearable pitch. Sarah screamed. Adam fumbled with the keys still in the door's lock. Once, twice. They managed to open the door and spilled into the hallway where the flickering fluorescent lights pulsed faintly. Adam quickly slammed the door shut behind them and locked it again. Both kids bolted down the hall. The school felt different. The walls didn't seem like concrete or brick anymore. They seemed soft, not like something solid, but alive, like they were breathing. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of burnt metal, and something else they couldn't name. "Do you feel that?" Sarah whispered, gasping for breath. She had never noticed before, but the hallways seemed endless. Adam nodded. It's like the air is alive. But they didn't have time to dwell on it. Behind them, the sound returned. Wet, scratching, unnatural. They turned to see the silhouette of the teacher at the other end of the hallway. Her shape was distorted, her limbs elongated, her head tilting at impossible angles. "Run!" Sarah shouted, grabbing Adam's arm. They sprinted through the hall, past the lockers, but the walls seemed to stretch on forever. The sounds behind them grew louder, closer. Heavy, shuffling footsteps, wrong, inhuman. Finally, they reached the emergency exit. Adam grabbed the handle and pushed. The door opened, but outside there was no night. There was only the purple light, swallowing everything. There was nothing out there, just emptiness. And purple. "What is that?" Sarah breathed. Adam stared into the light, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to run," he whispered, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. He didn't know where to run, or if there was anywhere to run at all. According to the local police department and the city's mayor, the school was later found completely empty. No students, no teachers, no one. The building was locked and abandoned. The halls were silent, empty. The only traces left behind were strange purple stains on the walls, handprints and smudges. And on the school's intercom, one final announcement was found recorded. "Lockdown lifted. All students have left the premises." Now go screw off. Goodbye. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss anything new.